Voiceover is everywhere, and you hear it every day. From radio.
Number one for New Country 96.3 Hawkeye in the morning.
To TV.
My name is Lady Whistledown. You do not know me, but I know you.
To movies.
My name is Optimus Prime. Autobots, roll out.
To animation.
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.
And so much more.
I'm loving it.
Welcome to episode 4.
Welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at the world of voiceover, including movies, TV, animation, and more. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today we have Prentice Osborne. Prentice, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really excited about being here.
Well, we most certainly are very excited to have you on the show today, Prentice. The very first thing we always like to do with a guest is to get a little background on who they are. Would you please share your story with us, Prentice?
Sure. I guess, as a kid, I was really big into music stuff, mostly. So, high school and college, I was in chorus. I did some drama stuff. I didn't really start hitting the VO stuff until after college. I had a receptionist job, and I hated it. And I was always complimented on my phone voice. I was really good on the phones for every job I had. And my husband actually recommended giving VO a try. He found a couple studios here in Atlanta. And it first started out as just a great way to have an activity after work where I could be creative and be myself. And I eventually got laid off from my job.
Oh, goodness.
And I know, right? It was kind of it was awful, but it was also kind of great because I hated the job. But I ended up working at the studio where I was training. So I got to learn a lot of behind the scenes stuff. And that's kind of where I started really learning the ins and outs of voiceover and editing stuff and putting demos together. I helped out with acting classes and I took a lot of great classes. And since then I've had I finally got that first demo made and I started auditioning for work and now I'm full time.
Well, that's most excellent to hear. I've always heard that firsthand experience is one of the best ways to get into this industry because you can learn from the pros while you're working,
Oh, absolutely. I would recommend, even at some studios around here in Atlanta, you can intern. And I would imagine that being a wonderful experience. You just learn so much when you're working with these people. So, taking classes is fantastic. And I highly recommend taking group classes and getting a coach. But the work experience does really just add another layer to it.
Well, that is most excellent, Prentice. I had not taken into consideration that doing an internship would be a great way to earn that experience firsthand. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, some studios, some different recording studios do have internship options. So if anybody is really looking to either do voiceover, if they love audio production, it can be a great resource to learn, to see other artists doing voiceover, but to also learn the ins and outs of audio software, which can be intimidating to some people.
Yes, that's very understandable.
Waveforms are scary to some people. They were scary when I first started learning to edit stuff. But, it's really fun. And once you get the hang of it,
then you take off with it.
Exactly.
So, Prentice, I'm curious. How did you become involved with Hasbro? And how did you end up becoming involved with Hasbro's My Little Pony Friendship Celebration app?
That was a fun one. It was no amazing story here. I auditioned for the role when they were doing, they first did a demo for the app. So it was before the app was given the go, by Hasbro. They had a mock-up of the app. So I first got booked to do that. And then once Hasbro said go ahead with the project to make the final piece, they kept me on to do the voices. And it was a lot of fun. It was a fun process. I auditioned for most of the ponies. I think I auditioned for Pinkie Pie and Twilight Sparkle, and I've always auditioned for rarity stuff. I think I auditioned for Rainbow Dash too, but in the end, I did Pinkie Pie and Twilight Sparkle, and it was a lot of fun. Who doesn't want to be a magical pony.
I can imagine the fascination with it. I mean, I've watched the show a time or two myself, I will admit.
It's a wonderful television show. Absolutely.
It is. It really is. And Prentice, so when you actually realized that you'd been cast as Pinkie Pie in Twilight Sparkle, what did you think?
I thought it was freaking awesome.
That's awesome.
And Pinkie Pie is my favorite pony on the show.
Okay,
so
wonderful.
That was exciting. And it was kind of neat to do Twilight Sparkle because it was, like Pinkie Pie's a loud, crazy character. You have to she's high pitched and high energy and doesn't sound anything like me. Twilight Sparkle wasn't nearly as difficult to do. It was like the changes were more subtle of what I had to do to sound more like Twilight Sparkle. But I love character building, so it was a very fun process.
Well, that's good. Especially when you're able to do more than one character on a project, it gives you diversity within your own projects, which is fascinating for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Prentice, how did you end up becoming involved with Pandora Radio?
That was just, it was just an accident. I don't really know. I didn't audition for it. They found me, which I was just shocked by when I got the email initially. I think they found me either from my personal website or I do audition for things on Voice 123, which is a pay-to-play site.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were looking for like millennial females at the time. And so they were just searching on different sites, and I guess they were Googling and looking through pay-to-plays and just trying to find that profile. And I was one of the ones they picked out, and I did audition at that point. I sent some samples in that they wanted me to read, and I've been with them for a couple years now, and they're my biggest client. I absolutely love them. They rock.
Well, that's most fascinating. I'd never even thought about the VO aspect in, things like Pandora Radio, where people have those little snippets in between for commercials. I'd never even thought about that aspect of VO work, even though I think about, the commercials on radio or TV. But Pandora Radio, it was something that I hadn't thought of until researching everything with you for your interview today. So
I know, right? Like, I teach an intro class sometimes here in Atlanta, and one of the first things we do is talk about different genres of voiceover and different places where it shows up, and it's amazing. I mean, like, if it talks or makes sounds, someone got paid to do that. So,
absolutely,
including Pandora ads. But yeah, that's probably like that's the bulk of my. They're the reason I'm full time right now. They call me multiple times a week, and I actually got to visit them recently. I was in California a couple weeks ago with my husband. And we were very close to Oakland, so I popped in and actually got to meet my coworkers in person. It was amazing.
Oh, that's most excellent.
It was fun.
I bet it was. Prentice, when it came to being hired for Pandora, did you know that they were going to use you for a multitude of commercials such as McDonald's and the Mini Cooper commercials and Coke and those kind of things?
I had no idea what they were going to use me for. I knew basically there's like a few different kinds of ads I do. Like, I mostly do like millennials, so like, between like 20 and 30, so about my age. And then I do teenager stuff sometimes. So I'll do like Plato's Closet ads. I do a lot of college ads on Pandora. Like, if there's a college ad where someone's like, "Are you ready to change your career?" Like, I do a whole bunch of those. I occasionally get like young mom reads, but yeah, I had no idea like what they would use me for. They use me for all kinds of stuff on there. It's really fun. I never know it's going to pop in my inbox with them.
Well, in regards to doing the commercials for college and such, you may be impacting someone's life for the better, and your voice was the key point that they heard to make that change in their life.
That would be awesome. I would love that. That gives me some warm fuzzies.
It should, because even though it's your job, there are people that probably heard that excited, energetic voice and said, "You know what? I'm going to go back to college because of what that girl just said."
That girl sounds really smart. I'm going to do what she says. I've done some PSAs on there as well, and I've had that thought when doing some PSAs, being like, "Wow, like this is a really helpful, uplifting message. This is, not just me being silly."
Absolutely. Well, in doing my research, Prentice, I learned that you did the National Distributing Company voicemail system for their employees. And was that a lengthy process for you to record that?
Actually, I did it for my husband. He works for National Distributing.
Oh, okay.
So it sounds so big and fabulous, but really, he was required to have a scripted voicemail. And he was like, "Can I get you to do it? I would have the best voicemail of everybody here if I could have a professional do it. So I did like professional phone voice, and all of his coworkers are super jelly because they always have like, they're doing their own voicemails. And when you call my husband, it's like, hello, you have reached the voicemail of Nicholas Gullidge. Like it's, when he first started working there, like people were like, who did your voicemail? And I mean, they could call me up and I'd do theirs too. I mean, it's a company that they distribute like wine, beer, and liquor. So he sells wine. So I'm like, hey, they could just throw some rosé my way and I could totally do their voicemail.
That's very fascinating. I did not know that was your husband's company, but I'm sure it does make a lot of people jealous.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, it's jelly. They totes jelly.
Okay, it's totally jelly. Okay.
Totally jelly. Like when I first met his coworkers at a Christmas party, they were like, you're the voice on the phone? And I'm like, yeah. So it's fun.
And they're like, do the voice, do the voice.
Do the voice, because it's not how I normally talk at all. But it's much more, it's more phone voicey, if that makes sense.
Absolutely does. Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. So as far as doing the voiceover project for your husband's company, how does that differ for like an animation project, like when you did the app and everything?
Oh, Lord, it's totally different stuff. For Nick's voicemail, that was very simple. And I've done other phone tree stuff as well. So, but that's much, it's not as in depth as far as what you have to do. Whenever I do animation stuff, you're building a character at that point. So like, some people say they make voices, but really you're building a character. And with the My Little Pony stuff, the character's already there, so I have a lot to work with. But whenever I've done any kind of character work, everything's different from, like, it's still the same studio. I have to be careful about my mic levels.
Absolutely.
Like me talking, I usually don't have to mess with my levels a lot when I'm doing Pandora or like phone tree stuff, or I do a lot of like narration and e-learning. But when I have to do character work, you do have to be mindful of when you're going to be loud, high pitched, lots of screaming and giggling and crazy sounds.
Yeah.
And
so a lot more variety then.
A lot more variety. And you have to make sure you don't fall out of that character. Mm-hmm. So like, there's a device that some people use called a handle, where you might have like a phrase or a laugh or something that you use to kind of pull you back into that character. Because it can be a little exhausting after a while to be something that's completely different than what you are. And you might start to slip out of it a bit. And then when you see that, you just take a second, take a breath, use a handle. And like I did a toy a long time ago named Safety Sam. And whenever I'd fall out of that character, I would go, oh, hey there, I'm Safety Sam, your monkey friend. And then I had it back again and I could get right back into it.
Wow, that is most fascinating, Prentice. Thank you for sharing. I hadn't heard of the use of handles until now.
Yeah, just like with on-camera acting, there's all kinds of things you can do, for voiceover as well. And for character work, that can be helpful. Like some people laugh into their characters. Some people might have a line or two just to kind of realign you. Especially if you're doing a lot of long form stuff that day, and it's like, maybe 20, 30 minutes in, you're like, I'm kind of losing it. Then you can kind of have that just to get you back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Prentice, as far as getting into voiceover work, did you ever imagine the diverse ways in which your voice might be used one day?
Oh, no. Like, I don't even know what I was expecting. I came into it with a pretty open mind. I was kind of open to whatever. Mm-hmm. I do know from teaching the intro class what people typically do expect when they come into voiceover. People expect a lot of character work and a lot of like cartoons and stuff. I think what I really learned was, like I mentioned earlier, how many different ways voiceover is used. I mean, I've been everything from like a boring narration video to a whole bunch of gambling slot machines in China. And I just, I don't even know what the game is called. I'm just like, I'm the poker dealer. I got paid for it, so whatever.
Did you actually speak English or another language?
It was English. I was like, I did a few games and I don't know, like, I've never seen them. I don't know, they're just like, I imagine them as being like, when you go to a bar and there's like those little like gambling games like on the bar that people, I feel like that's probably what it is, but I don't know. But I do know that I am the poker dealer.
That's amazing.
But yeah, it's amazing. Like I said, if it talks, I told the class, I'm like, if you hear a voice coming out of something and you don't see the actor at the same time, like, like on TV or something, then that was voiceover. So everything from commercials, cartoons, narration when you're taking a training class for work, that annoying thing at the gas station that asks you if you want to buy the car wash, like all of that is voiceover. Someone had to audition for that. Somebody got paid to do it. So it's amazing.
It is amazing to see the diversity of voiceover.
Exactly. It's everywhere.
Well, Prentice, could you tell us a time that you had to overcome a difficult situation in regarding voiceover and how you got through that situation?
You run into stuff like that really all the time. Probably one of the hardest things is when you are negotiating on your own. I do have a few agencies I work with, but a lot of my work I book myself, and you have to, at that point, negotiate your rates and negotiate the terms, and that can be really intimidating. And on occasion, you learn the hard way, and you might get screwed over a couple times, but that's probably the hardest thing. I've had, I always get paid. I've never not gotten paid for stuff. But there have been times where, like, maybe I wasn't getting paid quickly enough, or maybe the terms weren't as tight as I thought they were. And I have seen lots of people, whenever like conflict arises, that's when you're most likely to mess up. I mean, when something like that comes up, I have seen other actors like just flip out and, get upset. And, then if they did want to work with that client again, they're probably not going to get the opportunity to do so. I've had times where I hadn't gotten paid yet, and I just politely followed up and asked a few questions, and then they realized, oh snap, like we just needed this one piece of tax information, or so and so in accounting was out last week, and I could have flipped out and been a jerk and gotten all diva like, but it would have all been for nothing. So I think one of the hardest things to do is to know your worth. Like, do your research, find other people in the industry and ask questions if you don't know, like, how much should I be charging for this? Or the client wants me to re-record this again. Is that reasonable? If not, what should I charge for that? And when things do get a little weird, don't flip out. Like, take a minute, calm down, don't get upset, because usually everybody's professional and wants to get the job done and wants it to go well. So I think just being good under pressure is probably, whenever things get weird or there's conflict, that's probably the worst thing I've had to deal with is like, but to just keep your cool.
Well, that's very interesting to know. And I'm sure that, when you're able to keep that cool head, like you said, you have return business possibilities in the future. Well, as far as earlier you mentioned know your worth, how would you say, I know you said do research and stuff, but how do you really find out what your worth is when you're in the VO world, the voiceover world?
That can be one of the hardest things, because especially if you are not a union talent, like the union, like SAG-AFTRA has, they have set rates for things, and you can still use their rates as a benchmark to figure out how much things cost. If anybody were to like message me or like email me or something, I could give different websites I go to kind of, triangulate and look up, okay, well, for some jobs you get paid by the hour. For some jobs, it's a flat rate. For some jobs, you get paid per word. And, it's nice. It's nice we have the internet now, like I mentioned, so you can actually go to a few different websites that have pricing sheets, and you can kind of gauge based on that and talking to colleagues how much you should charge for something, or if a job looks cool and you're like, but is that really appropriate? Then you can look it up. If you have an agent, or if you book a job through an agent, then they take care of all that for you, which is really nice. But yeah, like there's just a lot of, great resources online. And as you do this and you get to know more talent, then they're a resource. You can always I can just contact, any of the hundreds of VO friends I have on Facebook now via Facebook Messenger and just be like, hey, I just booked this job for something I haven't done before, and they want to know what my rate would be for this. What do you recommend? And yeah, so
that's excellent.
I wish there was a simpler answer for that. That's probably, like I said, that's one of the hardest things is rate negotiation, and there's different size projects. Nothing's going to always be exactly the same. You're going to have a mom and pop company that is starting up, and they can't charge the same amount that McDonald's could charge for something, you know? So it's just, you know, if you're having trouble, if anybody's out there and you're having trouble, reach out to your voiceover colleagues. Like, you know, they can help you out.
Excellent advice, Prentice. As far as advice goes, what advice would you give to someone who's interested in possibly joining the voiceover industry?
Probably first off, I would see what kind of resources you have in your area. Acting classes, improv classes, studios in your area. Like, I would start with group things. I would start with like smaller acting classes because they're less expensive and you can feed off of other people with you. And then you can kind of dip your toes in the water and say, okay, do I really want to do this? Or is this really not me? Because if it's not, that's fine too. So I would start with like acting classes, things in your community that could help you out. And they don't have to always be VO specific. I took a puppetry class at the Center for Puppetry Arts, and that was pretty useful for me. And then after that, if you really want to get into it, see what kind of coaches are in your area. I know you can also do like Skype coaching, but if you can find a good coach that you can meet face to face, I think that really has, you know, even better. Yeah, I would start small. Active listening is really important. Even now, I love listening to ads. I love listening to cartoon characters, video game voices, and just listening to like what the trends are and how people sound and, you know, just taking some time to really listen to things. And that's a free way you can learn. And there's good literature out there. We have the internet. Like, oh my gosh, I'm usually one of the youngest people when I'm going to like conferences and stuff. People are usually like my parents' age, and they gripe. They're like, dude, if I had only had the internet when I started, oh my gosh. So
I bet you hear some stories, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
You know, I was wondering, do you have a website or a way in which people can contact you should they require your voiceover services?
Absolutely. PrenticeOsborne.com. I converted my old blog from back in my receptionist days. I used to write poetry about cleaning out the fridge every Friday. Yeah, that became a thing. One of my jobs as a receptionist was to clean out the fridge every Friday and send a message about an hour beforehand warning people I was about to throw their stuff away. And finally, one day I just cracked and I was like, I'm going to make these funny. And so I started writing poems and song parodies every week, and it became a thing, and everybody looked forward to the fridge email every week. So I kept a blog called Receptionist on the Verge, and I would write about the crazy things like the Office-esque things that would happen to me at the front desk, and I would pair it up with whatever fridge thing I did that week. But it was just a WordPress blog, and I've converted it, paid the money and converted it into a website, and PrenticeOsborne.com. So
now you know, if you're looking for a voiceover talent, you can contact Miss Prentice Osborne and inquire about her services for any voiceover projects you guys might be into or needing completed. I know she'd be more than happy to assist you guys. Well, Prentice, in closing, I'm going to ask you just a couple of questions. What is your favorite cartoon character and why?
Oh, snap. I guess as far as childhood favorite, my favorite cartoon was the Muppet Babies. You showed me these questions ahead of time, and I was thinking, oh, snap, I really like Muppet Babies. And I guess my favorite Muppet Baby was Gonzo.
Gonzo. Okay.
Yeah, I could relate, man. He was just weird in himself. And I have to say, I got to meet Katie Lee, who was the voice of Rolf the dog. And I don't geek out very often because I try to keep my cool, but I totally geeked out. And I'd already known Katie Lee. We were just, at a conference, like at lunch, and someone mentioned she was Rolf the dog from the Muppet Babies, and I lost it. I was like, oh my God, really? I just flipped out. I was such a dork. But Muppet Babies, yeah, and Gonzo. That was probably my favorite. Nowadays, there's so many great cartoons, and there's so many great voice actors out there. It's so hard to pick. Like nowadays, I love, I'm a huge Steven Universe fan. It's probably my favorite cartoon right now. But I love Adventure Time. I love Bob's Burgers. I watch a lot of cartoons. I watch more cartoons than like regular shows, probably.
Well, speaking of Muppet Babies, I interviewed Katie Lee just a couple weeks ago.
Katie Lee, she is fabulous. I love Katie Lee. She's so fun to be around. And she's so good at what she does. Her ADR work is amazing. If you ever go to her website and just check out, that's automated dialogue replacement for everybody who's like, what the heck is ADR? And
Thank you for explaining it.
You're welcome. It's essentially like dubbing, like we were talking about earlier, you and me, about like recording a voice over a finished animation or film. So instead of like how animation goes, where you record first and animate second, sometimes in film and in cartoons, like anime, they dub that. You have to do it reversed. And Katie Lee is amazing at that. When you take a time to go look at her ADR YouTube video, it is ridiculously cool. And she's Rolf the dog. I mean, what else? Oh my gosh. Yeah, she's amazing.
Well, you'll definitely have to listen to the episode with Katie Lee because we go into some of that Muppet Baby stuff that you may find fascinating.
I don't geek out anymore. We cool now. I see her and I'm like, hey, Katie Lee, what's up? But that one time, I just lost it. I couldn't even.
Well, the very last question I have for you today, Prentice, is what is your favorite Walt Disney movie and why?
Oh, duh. Lion King. That's my very favorite. I don't know why. It just is. I mean, it's a wonderful film. I first watched it when I was in 4th or 5th grade. So I guess it was age-wise, it was a good sweet spot for me. The music's so good. I am obsessed with cats. So a lion movie was right up my alley. The voice acting was fabulous in that film. The animation was beautiful. I enjoyed the writing. Elton John was still doing the music and, everything about it just is my favorite. I love most all Disney movies, but Lion King holds a special place in my heart. It's my favorite, absolutely.
Well, Prentice, thank you so much for sharing your favorite Disney movie with us. And thank you so much for joining us today on the show.
Dude, thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
We definitely would like to have you back in the future if you ever have some time for us.
Oh, heck yeah. Absolutely.
Well, that would be most excellent, Prentice. Prentice, would you please do us the honor of closing our show out today?
Absolutely. You are listening to Who Did That Voice, an awesome podcast about voice acting.
I totally agree. It's a wonderful podcast.
Whoa, you might need to take it down a notch.
You can't tell me what to do.
Okay, whatever. Thanks for listening, guys.
Hey everyone, and thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Who Did That Voice? If you enjoyed today's episode, please check us out online on all social media platforms at Who Did That Voice and on YouTube at Who Did That Voice 24. Also, remember to check out our website, whodidthatvoice.org. Again, that's www.whodidthatvoice.org. Thank you to all my listeners out there. I just wanted to say, if you want to partner with Who Did That Voice, just telling your friends and family about us is the best way to share the show with others. And or leaving us a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast from. The third and final way is by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Who Did That Voice.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.